Welcome to Deepen Your Meditation. I'm your host, Nick. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is your podcast to go deeper in your meditation practice and live a peaceful, joyful, spiritual life. Remember, you can find this podcast and many more at twostepsfrombliss.com/podcasts. Okay, so welcome to today's episode with Philip Cowlishaw, aka Prem Daas. Prem Daas is an English teacher living in Abu Dhabi, UAE, which is where we met actually. And I used to go to his yoga and meditation classes, and later he came to a few of mine. And I think you had this really nice spot on the beach, this kind of grassy patch, and we kind of stole your spot, didn't we?
That's right. You shouldn't bring that up right now. I'll get bitter for the interview. Yeah, that's right. I do miss that meetup. I don't have it there anymore, but yeah, it was a great spot.
That's such a nice spot. But we went to see Eckhart Tolle together in Dubai, which was awesome.
Yeah.
And when you meet Prem Daas, you can really feel the spiritual vibes just radiating from him, full of joy. And a huge part of Prem Daas's journey has revolved around chanting. So welcome. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Nicholas. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Good. And do you want to start by telling us a little bit about your journey, how you came to meditation and chanting and so on?
Sure. Well, okay. So actually, I came to chanting because I used to love musical theater and movies and entertainment and that whole thing. And ever since I was a kid, I always just enjoyed singing. Actually, I used to break dance a lot. I actually wrote a lot of raps when I first started sort of getting into music. I had a box full of raps. Now I have a box full of chants. And but I've always loved music. My mom and dad were both very musical. They still are, actually. And in fact, for a long time, I used to tell people, oh, yeah, my parents met in a choir in college, and then I found out later that wasn't true. I don't know where I got that story from, but they did meet in college, and they do still actually sing now. But anyway, so music was always in the family, but not a lot. I mean, we didn't. We had a piano in my first home, and then we moved, so we didn't have a piano. And when we moved from Pontiac, Michigan, to Rochester, Michigan, I think even my brother and sister stopped playing in the band and whatnot. Which was too bad because I wanted to start playing saxophone for some reason. And then one of my friends was like, no, you won't like the teacher. And so anyways, I actually abandoned music for a long time. And then what happened is I started drinking, and I drank from, I guess, the age of 12 until literally my 19th birthday. And so when I quit drinking, I just was sort of curious, like, why did I drink? I've always been introspective and whatnot. And I started reading books. And before I knew it, I guess I was sort of like on a spiritual path. And when I went to college, I started studying communications, theater, radio, TV. And a friend of mine was taking a voice class, and he said, oh, I think you'll really like this. And I did. I loved it. And the teacher was amazing. His name was John Paul White. He was this big, tall guy with this booming bass voice. He was an opera singer. And so I started taking classes with him. And I remember he said, singing really, I always teach people opera because really it's about becoming a vocal athlete. And I had never, of course, thought about, singing as some sort of exercise or something. But it turns out that it really is. And there are so many benefits physically for people that sing. And so I started doing musical theater and musical jazz, vocal jazz, opera, and I stopped doing rapping and breakdancing and stuff like that. So I had like 5 years from 19 to 24 where I was just reading everything I could about religions and spirituality, and I was doing Tai Chi. I was going to like Buddhist meditations, a little bit of yoga. I was just very curious. And like I said, I had always been introspective and sort of wondering like, what's out there? What's God? Who am I? What's my future going to be about? I started going to psychics and astrologers and numerologists and stuff like that. And basically, I just felt that I should move towards music. So I went to graduate school to study opera in Chicago at DePaul University. And but I had come to it late, and everybody who I was going to school with, they had been singing since they were like 5 or 6, like very seriously, somewhat seriously. And so I was very anxious. I didn't really have the high notes, the operatic high notes that you need as a bass baritone. And but I loved it. I did a few different operas. I had small parts, mostly did choral stuff. But I really enjoyed it, and it really helped me. It helped me with my self-confidence. It changed my voice. Of course, I was, moving from being a child to becoming a man. And it was just it was something I could do that helped me in sort of all areas of my life. Of course, the theater helped me. I always had a lot of emotion and energy. And so it really helped me to let that out and express it and channel it in a positive, healthy way. And then I moved to New York, and I was a SAG. Wait, was it SAG? No, that's Screen Actors Guild. What was I? I was a AFTRA. No, I forget, actually. It's been so long. I was in New York from 2000 to 2004. And I was in the union. I ended up doing a lot of children's theater, actually, which was fun. I toured around America in a little bus with like 5 people. And so, but the whole time I was meditating and reading books still. But then after New York, I moved to California because I had really always wanted to be in movies, to be honest. And I went to LA. My sister was living there, and I lived with her. And it was just interesting. I went to Hollywood, and I went to like a couple auditions, and for one thing, LA is nothing like New York. I mean, they're very different. New York, it's people, it's Times Square, it's, actors standing in lines, going to auditions. It's very much a community. But in LA, it's different. There's a lot of money out there and famous people and, big movie studios and things like that. And you don't necessarily feel that community. And at that same time, I had remembered that there was a guru who I had seen speak in Chicago living out there. And I was just like, oh, okay, let me see what this guy's all about. And I really fell in love with his community, as well as, I wouldn't say I fell in love with him, but I had wanted a guru. I had been reading a lot of Ram Dass and his stories with Neem Karoli Baba. And this was literally right before I moved to LA. So that was still fresh in my mind. I was thinking like, oh, I really want to have a guru-disciple relationship. And so when I moved out there and remembered that he was there, I looked him up, and I definitely felt like a resonance. I felt like I had known these people before. And he had actually, he had been an actor, which I thought was pretty ironic. He was this guy from Boston who he had a few small parts on TV shows, and he did some stand-up comedy. He knew the road manager, I guess, for Frank Sinatra. And I was thinking, wow, this guru, he's going to help me out with entertainment as well as spirituality. So I moved into his community, and I was there for about 2 years. He didn't help me out with my desires to be an actor at all. It was really full on, that whole experience, living at this ashram, and then I had 2 jobs at one point outside of the ashram. So it was really full on. I call it my military experience because I slept like 5 hours a night, and I had no personal time, but that was the whole point, but anyway, so while I was at the ashram, he bought a harmonium. All of us loved Krishna Daas. We would always put on his CDs while we were cleaning the house and whatnot. And another guy there also was a better pianist than me. He loved music as well. And so they said, okay, another guy played a guitar. Let's have like a little band, of course, for satsangs and darshans and all that. And so he bought a harmonium. And so I started, I had studied music. Like I said, I had studied piano a little bit, but I wasn't very good. I'm still not that good. But what I do play is chords. I'm not one of these harmonium players who's like, I play chords. It's pretty easy to play chords. Nowadays, it's so easy because there's like chordify.net, and even on YouTube, all these videos that just have background tracks, and they tell you what chords to play. And it's really easy to play a lot of these mantras and kirtan songs, bhajans, because usually they're like Beatles songs. They're only like 3 or 4 chords or something like that. So anyway, so that's I ended up moving from that ashram. I moved up to San Francisco, and I bought this harmonium that I have here. And I tried 5 or 6 of them. And when I played this one, I'll just play a little bit. I don't know if you can hear it, but I just fell in love with that sound. And still, every time I play it, literally, it melts my heart to some degree. I love it. To me, the chanting is very much a spiritual practice. So I love singing, and I love singing the mantras and whatnot. But it's primarily a spiritual practice that I use to increase my energy, to open my heart, and basically just to like start off my day. Right now, I wake up at 4:30 every morning. I do a half hour of yoga. And then I sing for maybe 10 minutes, not long, and maybe meditate for another 15 or 20 before I, go eat breakfast and all that. Yeah.
So how does that chanting kind of affect your day? It sounds like chanting is a big part of your life, and it has been, and music has been a big part of your life for a long time. So do you feel like it has quite a powerful effect on your day and the way you feel?
Definitely, yeah. Mostly, really, I do it every day. But if, occasionally I don't, if I'm up late the night before or whatnot. So I can definitely tell the days that I don't do yoga and I don't chant in the morning. As you mentioned in the beginning, I'm an English teacher, and so I speak all day. And it's all about communication. And so if I just sort of roll out of bed and, maybe have a cup of coffee and, just go to school and start talking, it's just not as clear. There's not a flow. So yeah, it's really all three of the things that I do. It's the yoga that really wakes up my body, and it's the chanting, the singing, that wakes up my voice and makes me feel like everything comes together energetically. And then it's also the meditation that just helps me to create a focus and intention for the day. So yeah.
I remember Yogananda, my guru, and he said once that chanting is half the battle, which is a pretty big statement, really, for someone who had so many teachings and so much to offer. And he said that chanting is half of that. So that gives you an idea of the kind of importance of it with the meditation journey and on the spiritual path. Do you think it is a really important part of the spiritual path? Do you think you can go on the spiritual path without it?
Well, yeah, I don't like to get into like shoulds or saying you have to do this or you have to. So in that sense, I wouldn't say you have to sing, but I love meditation as well. And I know you do as well. And I have heard like teachers like maybe Adi Ashanti and other people say that sometimes meditation, if you only meditate or if you only read books, it can become very much just conceptual, the whole spiritual path. And it can become boring. It can become dry. So I think what chanting offers, in yoga, they would call it Bhakti yoga or devotional yoga. So if you're somebody who feels this, if you define your spiritual practice by there's me and there's God, and I love God, or I want to love God, because sometimes that's the case, or I want to surrender to God, or I want to feel a greater connection or an intimacy with God, then I really do think that chanting can help that, because it happens so quickly. Again, just a little bit of singing in the morning and it's like, boom, I just feel a shift. It's hard to explain how it feels, but sometimes I'm just sort of chanting like, it's 5 o'clock and I'm like, blah, 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 blah. And then something shifts and there's like a presence. And then that energy, it just expands. So I think it can be very helpful. If you think about all the religions, I think most of them involve singing. There's something, I used to be, Christian for a while. My mom's very Christian, and I sang in choirs. And I remember reading, I think in the Bible or hearing somewhere that they said, yes, God is omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient. He has everything, but he doesn't have our praise. And so there's a great quote by Vivekananda, I think, that says God hasn't fallen into a ditch. God's not a victim. God doesn't actually need anything. God's everything. But in Christianity, they have said what God does need is your praise and your worship. That could sound a little bit egoic, like he's like, come on, praise me. But really, I think actually if God ever said that, let's say, I think he was saying it for us. I mean, ultimately, of course, all the spiritual practices are for us because we are the ones who benefit first and foremost from any spiritual practice. So if you have a gratitude practice, then, you know, if you say, I thank you, you feel that immediately inside of your heart and your body. And so it benefits and behooves you to have a devotional practice. For me, you know, I was thinking about this interview, and of course I think about this stuff all the time, but my life really has been this sort of, I won't call it a battle. Maybe it has felt like that at times, but this sort of dance maybe between fear and love. And Adi Shanti helped me to see that they're two sides of the same coin. But anyway, so, you know, I have dealt with fear a lot in my life. And so basically it's like an alchemist, you know, I've tried to transform any fear that I feel. I've tried to turn it into love or surrender it to love. And so chanting definitely helps with that.
Yeah, and like you talked a little bit about kind of Christian singing, and I used to go to church when I was a bit smaller, you know, and and I remember, you know, the songs, or what they call the hymns, and they were fine, you know, but comparing that to chanting, they're quite different, aren't they? Because chanting, it feels like much more of a direct connection, and I think that's, for me, you know, not that I have anything against Christianity, I think it's a wonderful religion, but for me, the connection of the, you know, the Indian teachings, the direct connection through meditation and through chanting, it just seems so much more, you know, real, so much more visceral and substantial, when you compare it to that. So do you think there is a difference there between the hymns and the chanting?
To be honest, I think it's all subjective. Is that the right one? Yeah, because I'm sure there are people who feel that way about Christian music, but I would agree with you in the sense that basically there's the mind and the heart, and I think a lot of doctrine and dogma, it's basically from the mind. You know, a lot of it is shoulds, rules. It's more of an intellectual approach to God, you know. And so a lot of people have taken these quotes or Bible verses or whatnot and set them to music. Some of them are actually, you know, pretty and moving. But I do think they're more from the head. And so when you sing them, you can feel that, you know, and especially, of course, if you take into consideration like Old English, and, you know, people don't really speak the way that these hymns are written, you know, thou art thou, you know, so it doesn't feel like real to you, or you're like, what is this? You know, it's like this old poetry or something like that. But some of it's very beautiful too. But yeah, so you and I, of course, we both love non-duality, Advaita Vedanta. And, but yes, I think what Hinduism offers is what you said, direct. There's a direct teaching, a direct experience, connection you mentioned. And I think that says a lot about us as well, that we just resonate with these teachings. There's something about them that we do feel that they're very direct, where somebody else maybe could hear them and feel like, gosh, they're so abstract, you know, if they conceptualize them, you know, God is everything or something, or God is Ganesha the elephant, you know, they were like, what, you know, what is this, what are these teachings all about? But yeah.
And it's like you say, you know, there are many paths to God or spirit, and there's no like one right way, and many people have found, you know, deep experiences through you know, all of the different religions, really. It just a matter of
the right way is the way that works for you.
Exactly right. And you know, while you were talking, I actually, about your story and stuff, like I was making quite a few connections. You know, you talked about your drinking in your early life, and about how you kind of wanted to be in the movies, and I wanted to be a writer. You know, I always wanted to be a writer, and then you like going onto the spiritual journey in your early 20s and so on. It was quite similar to how it kind of played out for me. So it's just interesting how it unfolds. But you mentioned Nisargadatta. Can you tell us a little bit about him and how that came about, you know?
Yeah, well, he's an interesting character. I will definitely call him a character, and I don't say that with any disrespect. But basically, I know when he died, it was 1987. I think he was in his 80s. I'm not exactly sure about the year he was born. Maybe you know, but so he's pretty modern. He's contemplative, or not contemplative. What's that word?
Contemporary.
Contemporary, right? I'm an English teacher, but yeah, contemporary. Although now it's 2020. But his book, I Am That, is considered to be, basically a classic in spirituality. And he definitely took the direct approach. He was a fiery character, very passionate, I guess you could say. He was a humble guy, actually. I mean, he was a cigarette maker. He owned these little beedi shops, and he would make these little Indian beedi cigarettes. He was uneducated, from Mumbai. He was married and had children. And then I guess it was around the age of 30. His friend said, come meet my guru. And he did. And that guru told him pretty much immediately, I think, he said, you're not what you think you are. You're not what you think you are. You are the Parabrahman. You are the absolute supreme reality. And those words, he said, they just stayed with him. He just believed him. It was one of these things that I think just went right inside of him, and it resonated with him. And basically he said he continued, of course, to be married and have his shops, but whenever he had free time, or even I think during his work, he was just thinking about these words, what this guru had told him. And I think the guru actually died pretty soon thereafter. So really, he just had these initial words from the guru, but they were enough. After 3 years, he says that he was realized, whatever that means,
Mm-hmm.
So I think he then did sort of decide, okay, I'm going to go into the mountains and leave my family. But then, life brought him back, and he ended up teaching basically from his living room for the rest of his life. For I guess maybe another 50 years. And it was a small living room, and I think he had maybe 10, 20 people at max, I guess. There are some videos, of course, on YouTube of him. You can see him sort of flailing around and gesticulating and all this stuff. And I was quite shocked when I saw a video of him. I was like, whoa, because his words are like so amazing. I Am That has 101, let's call them chapters, I guess. They're basically just discourses, discussions between him and seekers. But I think the book is like 500 pages, and it's just like, I remember reading it, I don't know, a few years into my path, and just like light bulbs and fireworks. And it makes so much sense to me. It does. And I really feel like even if you're not on a spiritual path, it answers a lot of questions just about what it means to be a human being. And basically he says, look, as a human being, this mind, it desires pleasure and it fears pain. And if you look at your whole life, it's basically this sort of dance between, I want this, but I don't want that. So he says in that book, it's not bad. It's not right or wrong or good or bad, actually, to have these desires. They're just there. But he said, actually desire the real, desire the really good thing, which is, of course, yourself, your ultimate self. And so Jack Kornfield, some other people actually sat with him and spent time with him. And of course they went on to be, well-known teachers themselves.
Yeah, and he is like he's a very kind of big, like well-known spiritual teacher now, isn't he? I'm sure, and similar to like Ramana Maharshi, who also had a small following at the time, but now millions of people out there know about these people because they were such powerful teachers, right? But back to the chanting, do you have any tips for us on like how we can chant, how we can get the most out of chanting? Yeah, like for me, I found that when I sit to chant, I've got 2 kids, and my wife, and people are always around. So I find that when I chant, I'm doing it quite quietly and it's a little bit weak. And what I've noticed about your chanting is it's very like powerful and from the belly, and it's really strong. So I don't know, that's one thing, but do you have any other tips for like how to go deep with chanting?
Well, it's funny you should mention this because I've been I don't know if you've seen, but there's a gentleman named Sunesh. He's a tabla player, and he moved to Abu Dhabi almost a year ago now. And we've been playing together. Actually, we just were in the recording studio a couple weeks ago and recorded 4 songs. And something he said has stuck with me. He said that his tabla teacher sometimes would have him just play as quietly as he could for maybe an hour. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting. So I've really been thinking about that lately and trying to do that, especially in the morning, because my neighbors and everything like that, is I try to really play as quietly as I can. And what I like about that is what I mentioned earlier, is that if you think about it, if you're trying to get inside of your heart, it's not about being loud and powerful. It's about being intimate and quiet. And of course, when we meditate, we're not also meditating like, we're trying to quiet the mind. So I've been doing that a lot lately, just playing really quiet music. And it's very nice, actually. It tends to be that when I'm doing like a kirtan with a group of people, and I can feel their energy, I really feel the crowd, let's say, and I feel their love, like I feel like everything's coming through me, and so that really energizes my singing. And it's not even, it's conscious, but it's also sort of not conscious. I just sort of go with the flow. I don't feel like I'm saying, okay, now I'm going to do this and now I'm going to do that. A little bit, of course, but mostly I'm just trying to sense the energy and go with that energy. And I think from my experience of going to other kirtans, I think people, they really love that. And I think it's a release for them. They like dancing and singing. And Krishna Daas spoke about a man who, he came to one of his kirtans and Krishna Daas started singing in English. And the guy was like, "Whoa, no, I don't want English." Because the mind knows English if you are an English native speaker. And the whole thing about kirtan, one of the things is that, many people don't know what the Sanskrit actually even means. They're just these syllables and sounds and symbols and things like that. And that can be very relaxing and calming to the mind. As soon as it's English, then you're thinking in English, and you start thinking about your day and whatnot. So I thought that was very interesting. So back to what you were sort of asking for in terms of advice. One thing I like to do as well is that, the Buddha and many people have said, basically, you are what you think. And if you're sitting there just thinking, ruminating about all of the things, that you're nervous about, you're worried about, you're just staying with that fear. It's not going anywhere. It's like a hamster on a wheel or something. But it's not very really productive. So what I like to do is even just think of a word. Usually it's love. It might be truth. It might be compassion. And I might just sing that word quietly, gently, over and over, like a japamala. It's repetitiously, but it's with feeling as well. And what I find is that I sort of get filled with that, with whatever the essence of that word is, whatever it's pointing to. One of my teachers, my first teachers was Stephen and Andrea Levine. And he tells a story of meditating and in the earlier days of his meditation, I guess. And for whatever reason, he was like, okay, I'm going to meditate on purple, just to have something to focus on. So he was meditating on purple all day. And then a woman came to visit him and she gave him a hug. And she's like, "Oh my gosh, when I hug you, all I see is purple." And he was like, wow, yeah. So he thought, oh, well, why meditate on purple? I can meditate on loving kindness. I can meditate on compassion. I can meditate on anything, basically, and create that and cultivate that and make that expand. So basically, like I said earlier, my life's been this dance between fear and love. So, when people say, well, what does this mantra mean? Or what does this mean? What does this mean? I just say, it means love. They all mean love. And really, also kind of going back to Christianity, in the Bible, it says God is love. Love is God, I think. So really a lot of what kirtan, bhajans, what it is you're just repeating different names of God. And again, basically, you're just surrendering to love. Also, though, I like to think of like intelligence. You're surrendering to intelligence or creativity or truth, or it could be consciousness, beingness, awareness. And yeah, I would say in general, keep it simple. My guru in LA, he said, you can dig 10 holes or you can dig one hole very deeply, right? So
that's really interesting advice, actually, and that's something I have to keep in mind right now, because like I've got so many projects going on, and I'm
right.
probably digging like 10 shallow holes, and I think I need to
Right.
focus on doing everything properly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say, I don't like to make the ego too much of like a scapegoat or whatnot, but the ego, like if you think about the mind, it likes doing. The mind is doing. It likes experience. So it's always looking for different experiences. Those could be worldly experiences or spiritual experiences. But basically, again, that mind wants pleasure. It wants to be entertained. Nothing wrong with that. It's just how it is. But spiritual practices, I think, focus more on the beingness and not so much on the doingness. The doingness happens, actually, it just comes out of the beingness. But so I think we do have to watch ourselves and watch even our spiritual path, how much we're focused on, I've got to achieve this, or I've got to do this. It's just like the same mind, just being used in the spiritual realm. And of course, doing is fun. And sometimes it is about doing, maybe it's about service. Maybe it's about helping people. Maybe it's about making change in the world. So doing happens. But I think, again, the quality of your doing is affected by the beingness that you either cultivate or that you discover, because a lot of it, I think, is about discovering what's already here.
Yeah, and like that's just such important advice, because if you start your day off in a really busy way, and you're doing all day, and you're very
Yeah.
stressed, it would be better to just like sit quietly for like an hour in the morning, and then you would get more done in less time because you'd feel more relaxed and more peaceful, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's funny, because I think like in movies and TV, you always see like a family, like no one eats breakfast. They never eat their whole breakfast. It's like the
Yeah.
father comes down, he's got a briefcase and he grabs a piece of toast and I gotta go, and he drinks a little coffee, and it's like, you just see it, like we think like, oh, it's dramatic and wow, they're all rushed. But if you think about it, it's like the quality of their life, I think, kind of stinks in a way. But I would much rather have, I would not want to just wake up and go to work. I really cherish my mornings. Right now I start at 8:30. So I've got 4 hours that I'm awake before I do any sort of work, but when I do start work, I'm happy and I feel good, and, I'm warmed up in a sense, but I really cherish the silence and the spiritual practices that I engage in during the morning. Because again, it just really sets the whole day. Because I feel like what I wanted to say actually was, if you start off sort of like nervous and stressed, like the whole day just pretty much ends up being that way. You always feel like you're trying to catch up, like, oh, I just got to get to that next thing, and I got to finish this. And if you think about it, it's quite exhausting to think of a day where you're always like behind and trying to chase and catch up to something.
So what would you recommend to someone who is fairly new to the spiritual path? They don't have like 4 hours in the morning, but maybe they've got 30 minutes or 45 minutes.
Yeah.
What would you recommend as a really good way to start off their day,
Yeah, well, I definitely believe quality over quantity. So, half an hour is great. And what else do I want to say? Oh, just that doing something is better than doing nothing. I really believe that. People that say, oh, I don't have time, or it's going to take too long, that's just an excuse, really. If you have 5 minutes, I remember Stephen Levine actually saying, if you can, follow your breath for like 10 breaths, it's pretty amazing in this world, especially now. He said this like in the 80s. Now in 2020, with all these distractions, looking at our phone every 10 seconds, if you can really just sit there and follow your breath. I mean, I've been meditating 30 years. And even, I remember the other day, it's hard to explain. I felt like, yeah, I'm meditating. I'm here, I'm focused. But then it just got so much better. It just shifted. And it was just like, like everything just seemed so much more clearer. And I was just there. I was there even more than I, was before, but even before I thought I was there. So in other words, there's always another layer to discover. You can always go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. There's a teacher named Michie, and he says, there's something that never changes. That's awareness. Awareness is unchanging, but consciousness is always changing. So even if you have some sort of an awakening or a big experience or whatnot, or you really realize, oh, there's this unchanging awareness, there's still like evolution. There's still I don't know if progress is the right word, but there's always, life continues. So you're going to continue to learn things, experience things, and deepen. I think, again, I love this analogy that basically the spiritual path is basically from the mind to the heart. That's basically it. These are all the ideas and concepts and thinking, but basically we're just trying to find a way to sink into the heart. And in the heart, that's where everything is. That's where people find this satisfaction and happiness and contentment,
So could you tell us about, do you remember a time when you went really deep with chanting?
There's, like I said, when I play the harmonium, there's like something there always. And do I go super deep? No, but it almost always feels good. I'll just say it that way. But what I was going to say is I think it's probably, I can do it on my own. But again, when I'm with a group of people, and most of the kirtans that we do are, I guess they're at least 2 hours, hour and a half, 2 hours. And pretty much it's continual singing. Sometimes like one song might last 10 minutes. I don't know if we've gone 15, but so it's the nice thing about mantra and kirtan, again, is that it's so repetitious. You don't have to worry about words. Maybe it's just Om Namah Shivaya for 20 minutes, So, and again, the chords are easy. So it's pretty automatic. So the body's doing it automatically. Even the singing is sort of automatic. So the consciousness or awareness can really just sink deeper and deeper or higher. Sometimes there's an experience of, expansion, or you feel like you're getting lighter and higher. So I think it goes in two directions.
Yeah, we should talk a little bit about the Hare Krishnas. These guys have their like main practice really is chanting, isn't it? Like, have you had much experience? Like, do you know much about those guys? And I mean, what do you think about the? I think they don't really have a massive meditation practice. It is mainly more focused on the chanting, right?
Right. Well, again, I think they call themselves Bhaktis, going back to Bhakti yoga again. So basically, if I can remember correctly, there are 4 kinds of yoga. Basically, the devotional, there's the intellectual path, there's the hatha yoga, or the physical path. And then I think meditation is maybe the royal Raja yoga.
Karma yoga of like service as well.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, selfless service, karma yoga. Yeah, so I think those 5 maybe. So yeah, they are basically devotional. I think the beautiful thing that happens with yoga, physical yoga, asanas, and also bhakti yoga is that after you do them, you naturally then go into a meditative state. I think you're in them while you're doing them, but then the silence after, like, it just transforms you. And that's why all of these practices were invented anyways, is just to put you into that state. So I think it happens naturally, which is in a way even nicer because, as whenever you're trying to teach someone how to meditate, it can become very conceptual and people get nervous. And am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? And, oh my gosh, I thought about my laundry, and they feel like there's all this judgment about it. But with singing, and it could be any kind of singing, it doesn't have to be mantra or anything like that. So basically it's like meditation just happens, it's just a natural effect or occurrence that happens because of singing, basically, or any of these spiritual practices. Yeah. I was at the pool a little bit before we met, and I was sitting there. All of a sudden this worker guy was over here, and I was getting up, and he was like, "Sir, Hare Krishna." And I was like, "Oh, Hare Krishna, thank you." And I really felt like, oh, this is like a little messenger or something. And now you're asking about Hare Krishna.
That's funny, actually, because when my first child was born, we were in the hospital in England, and I was playing Krishna Daas during the whole like labor process in the kind of hospital room there. And then the midwife who was dealing with us, she said, "Oh, are you Hare Krishna?" Which I didn't know that's right. And I was like, "Oh no, we like the music." But I guess people, if you listen to that music and stuff, people probably just assume that about you. Right,
because you see it in movies. Sometimes they even kind of make fun of it or whatnot. People, The Hare Krishna is called the Maha Mantra. It's the great mantra. And basically they feel like if they just chant that mantra, it will take them to God. You know, it's like the best mantra. For me, mine is Om Namah Shivaya. And I can't tell you why I forget, but an astrologer told me, something about, actually we have similarities astrologically, but something to do with Saturdays. And basically I was told to chant Shiva. And actually, I don't know if it's because I was told that or not, but I really love the Om Namah Shivaya chants. So I'm glad. At least it's something I like and not something I dislike. But
man.
So
it's a powerful mantra, right? Well, I mean, do you mind giving us a little sample of
sure. Yeah, I was just going to say, in Hinduism, we have Brahma, the creator, and Vishnu, the sustainer, and then Shiva's the destroyer. But for me, it's about destroying the ego, although I wouldn't call it destroying it, but it's that. So yeah, here's one that I've been singing for a long time. I'll sing it quietly. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Shivaya, 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 Shivaya. Om Namah 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 Shivaya. Asatoma Satgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityurma Amritam Gamaya.
Wow, man, that's awesome stuff. It's like really powerful. You can feel it, you feel it in your body, in your bones. Oh man, so thank you so much for coming on today. How can people find out more about you? I know you've got a YouTube channel. I see you've got like 7,000 subscribers now. That's cool.
Do I?
So yeah, where can people learn a bit more about you?
So yeah, my YouTube page is Phil Films, PH for both of those, PHILPHILMS. And yeah, you might see a few English videos for my students, but mostly I have meditations and songs and kirtans and stuff like that. So yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much. And
Thank you.
we went off in all kinds of tangents, but that's the best way, I think. So yeah,
Good.
man, great to chat with you, and I will
Thank
speak to you
you.
again soon.